Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow, and in today's episode, those great episodes you always like, is another interview. And today's I'm going to interview my friend Richard, who's been a long time, it's a long time friend that sort of got in really early when I just started, my getting into anime and that kind of stuff, she's get into the various different stories of that. But again, before I begin, I want to remind people to go down below, click like, click subscribe. Definitely, even just doing something simple as hitting like, really does help the YouTube algorithm. Again, now my friend Richard here, okay, I'll just warn you in advance, okay. He is, very knowledgeable and resourceful. He very touches on a lot of different topics and that kind of stuff, and is knowledgeable of a bunch of different fields, including computer tech, and he has a lot of experiences in different things. He has very broad range of views and very interesting, some really far ideas and theories and concepts, which a lot of people don't think about. So he's a really good person to talk about different ideas and bounce ideas off of. But there's one thing that I'll tell you, I'll warn you right away. He's not afraid to give his opinion, and he doesn't pull punches. Okay, so if he believes in something, or likes to talk about something, has a view on particular something, he won't hide or candy coated in any way. So I'm gonna have to be a little interesting because again, this is YouTube, so I may actually have to make a special version for the Patreon, just because some of his the things are really riveting, as it were, and might be even too hot for YouTube. So we'll see. I think we're going to team up and do quite a few episodes. Today's topic is my friend Richard. I'm going to do a series of interviews with him. Again, we've done a lot of things. We've done done the road trips down to San Diego Comic Con and Anime Expo. He's worked on various different projects and that kind of stuff. With the anime fan subs and that kind of stuff, and he was there, during the very beginnings. Now, again, I've already warned you that he's very to the point. Okay, he won't hide around something, and he won't pussyfoot around. If he has an idea, an opinion, and as radical as it may be, he will let you know, and he'll be real straight up, forward, honest, and that kind of stuff. So again, he's because of this, he can come up with some pretty good stories, and he's been around the block a while, so he also has some really good stories, and so definitely, if you want to make comments to that, and if you want him to explore a particular idea, I do plan to do more interviews with him. You want to want more on a particular topic, or would like to see how I react to some of this stuff, because that he's a good person to bounce ideas and maybe get me to answer, and come up with things that I maybe not really have touched, and that's what part of the reason why I wanted to talk more with him, because there are definitely certain things that aren't talked about very much, and this will definitely help give you some ideas on that. So again, if you got a comment, leave a comment below, and they'll give me some more questions to ask Richard next time he comes on. Right, so I'm sure you could. That sort of leads over here, and you were warned. All right. So without further delay, let's get into the interview with Richard. One of the recent trends in anime, and a lot of people are complaining about things about anime, is that why is modern anime so different than, let's say, older animes? And a lot of people say that the story writing and the storytelling, the animation itself, is getting stale, and a lot of the ideas and topics are just not very interesting anymore. Why do you think that is the case?
The creators, usually the creators and the artists and the people that are visionaries, they basically create the inception of the idea, and then the cottage industry follows after, and it creates either some type of genre or some type of subject matter that either was not, there wasn't an interest and it garnered an interest, or there was already an interest but they put a new angle on it, and then it just becomes formulaic after that. So at some point you go from artist, creator, visionary to people that are bean counters or facilitators or cruise directors, and their bottom line is money and how to mass market it or to make it viral. But creators and artists and visionaries, they still have to go through those gatekeepers, the promoters, the marketers, the people that can monetize or commodify it.
In terms of in terms of creativity, do you think it's just the manga artists will have the ideas, but the corporate office, the executive committee are just stifling all these ideas?
I've worked in government, I've worked in private sector for over 30 years of my life. And just because somebody takes the helm or is authority of some organization and they run it doesn't necessarily mean they're a visionary. They may be just a cruise director or a captain of the boat that just keeps it on the right track and steers it in the direction that's already been set at a certain point.
Isn't that the sort of the same way that let's say our movie industry or maybe our music industry releases people? It's all, it doesn't matter if you have the talent, if you just don't have the right record label, the right people promoting it. That is your bane to failure.
Absolutely. My brief foray into the movie and TV business as a background actor, I've seen that where it's really not only who you know, but what you're willing to do for them. So it's not really about art. It's not really about creativity. It's not about vision. It's how you facilitate the ambitions of those with larger schemes, with larger rackets, right? You're just a player, right? Now, you could be a very influential player, but it depends on how much of a footprint you leave, right? There's some people, they're flashes in the pan, top 20 single types, and that's it. And then they're known for that one thing, one hit wonder, if you want to call them, in the entertainment business, and then they fade into obscurity. And then there's other people that have staying power because they have a cult of personality or they have people behind them that's able to sustain that. Some of these people should leave the business actually, but for whatever reason, they still have staying power. If I was to pick on anybody, you could look at someone like Madonna, right? I mean, I don't care about Madonna. I personally don't think there's anything special about her music anymore. She had her, her time on stage and in the limelight, but what does she do now? Is there anything interesting or edgy? Would you say a Madonna is like a Lady Gaga? Or let's pick on the movie and TV business. Why do some actors or actresses still are in there when they're not even relevant? Right? And I can name names and pick on people in particular, but I don't know, like, would somebody like Helen Mirren be relevant anymore? She's relevant for the roles that she portrays, but for a Zoomer or for a millennial, do they care about a Helen Mirren? Right? So it's the same thing with anything. You can go back to anime and say, oh, I was into Dirty Pair, or I'm into Pat Labor. For those people that don't know, those were shows that were relevant at the time, that were popular. But are they now? Or do they have different themes and using those archetypes have sustained it and formulaic to something else where they make it a little bit more edgy or a little bit more sexualized, or have they innovated something about the medium that you can rehash those themes again?
do you find that the over usage, like I mean, that's interesting that you mentioned like Dirty Pair, that kind of a show has always resurfaced as release it again, put a new angle, put a new artist, because that's what now they got the Dirty Pair OVAs, got the new rendition of the Dirty Pairs with slightly different art styles. Could they not also do that for just like anything? Like for example, let's say they would decide to reboot Pat Labor, like rebooting Trigon. Is that just a sign of, geez, we're just getting lazy and we're just can't think of any new ideas, so we'll just take the old ideas and just revamp them a little bit, put some CG in them, and make them into another thing? Do you think that's just more of this lazy story writing?
Well, there's two things they have to look at. One is, how good are people's memories, right? If you're talking about Zoomers and Millennials who weren't even born yet when we were delving into this stuff, to them it may be a new thing, right? If you spruce it up a bit and make it more current with technology and through the medium, presenting it in such a way that's bleeding edge, sure, they may think this is a new thing. The old becomes new again. But then I look at something like Space Cruiser Yamato. I don't know how many iterations that they've done of that same story. Yeah, animation's a little bit different. It's more up to date. Characters have been updated. The animation's cleaner. They use maybe elements of CGI. There was the coming out of the live action movie. But it's basically the same damn story. It hasn't really changed.
Agreed.
The characters have changed a little bit, right? They may add a little different element to it, and maybe a little bit, there's a twist. But essentially the characters and the technology hasn't changed in the actual depiction of what is in the anime. The anime itself may have been updated. Maybe more current voice actors are people that are more relevant. Maybe the themes have changed slightly. Maybe they even make it woke, or they inject feminism into it, or other current themes that are political or social or religious or sexual. Who knows? Just to update it, right? Some of the characters end up being lesbian or gay, and that's more relevant now. Maybe some of these characters are gender benders, right? And that makes people gravitate towards it because it's relevant to what is important to people. But essentially the story is still the same. And they've not even sanitized it, because if you look at the history of that anime and the original comic book, it really was a metaphor talking about essentially the Japanese and the Allied powers. The Japanese being, within the Axis, which historically people may not be aware of who the Axis was. And it was against this perceived alien threat, which was, at the time, in the depiction, it was supposed to be aliens, but they really represented the Allied powers, particularly the U.S. So have they changed that narrative in there? It depends on how good you are in terms of remembering history and knowing the intentions of why that manga was created before it became anime, and they had movies and everything else. So it depends on what kind of outcome is sellable, or is palatable and is formulaic, right? When it comes to money, it really doesn't matter. It's either going to be viral, it's a hit, or it's a flash in the pan, or it withers on the vine. It just goes flop, ka-flump. So it's really hard to say. This is really determined by somebody that looks at the IP and says, do we have something here? And can we run with it and repackage it, reformulize, and resell it? And does it have a big enough base between those that do remember and those that don't, and you bridge that, right? I think you could do that with almost anything, but some things, they're timeless. Like I pointed out Space Cruiser Yamato, but then you look at Gundam. I mean, how many iterations of Gundam have we seen since its inception in the early 80s? Ridiculous.
Yes.
Right? For me, I liked it, but then after a while, it's just like, no, I'm getting sick and tired of this IP. There's only so many ways you can repackage it. Right? Are you going to have like live action superheroes like the Go Rangers or the Kakyu Rangers, and they're all in Gundam costumes? I don't know. Maybe I just say this in this interview right now, and someone says, hey, that sounds cool. I'm going to do that. Right? I mean, and who says it doesn't sell? It's stupid. No, someone says, no, that's brilliant. Let's combine the two and sell it to people. And then they do. And then it may or may not become a hit. Someone makes a ton of money and there's like, oh yeah, let's just run with this.
Yeah, that's true enough. And there's often examples like Cowboy Bebop. I think they bridged the gap horribly. Too many people remembered what the original anime was like. When you put a live action that doesn't correspond, or things that you tried to integrate into the live action that obviously a lot of people sort of remember differently, then it doesn't go over too well.
Well, you see, and that's funny you mentioned that because while I was working in movies and TV and I saw it, I didn't even know what Cowboy Bebop was. People have told me watch this anime, blah blah blah. It's like I don't have the time. But I saw the live action show, and yeah, it's formulaic, it's kind of contrived, but I didn't mind it because the special effects, yeah, the acting was a bit stiff because you're basing it on anime, and I don't even know if you even had a manga, but it was okay. With the special effects and the technology and the costumes, I thought it was okay. I didn't think it would be something that's like, yeah, it's Game of Thrones quality or it's Man in the High Castle quality. It was watchable for what it was. Would I watch it and be a fan? Probably not. It was an interesting watch. It was niche. But the common complaint I heard from people was, no, this is unwatchable. I watch original anime. I loved it. This is garbage. This is crap. Well, but they say this about many things. Like the Dune movie, right? The first Dune movie that came out. There were haters and there were people that loved it. If you didn't know Dune, more often than not, those people loved that movie. And if you knew Dune, you read the books and you were a fan of Frank Herbert, you hated it because it didn't depict what the vision that they thought Frank Herbert had and what people interpreted the books to be. So if you're going back to Cowboy Bebop, for the fans and for the niche and for people that know what the IP was, yeah, it was garbage. It was a flop. But for people that don't know anything about it, they're like, oh, it's something I watch on Netflix. I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to mindlessly watch it and see what it's about. And I get an idea. I'd have to agree with the same sort of analogy with something like, because you mentioned Dune, I'm thinking Starship Troopers. The original books, and then you come up with the countless, anime release of it, new CG version of it, the movie. They all had different angles on it, and I don't know if any real person that's sort of read the book and kind of went, why can't they just come up with a closer interpretation of what was actually in the book? Well, before I answer that about Starship Troopers, let me ask you this question. How many people do you know read books anymore? Yeah, how many people actually read books? Okay, so if you're going to complain about the source material, have you read the book? Right? So if I look at Starship Troopers, I can remember my first exposure to Starship Troopers franchise and IP was when I saw the actual strategic role-playing game being sold. And if you looked at the box of the game and the game itself when it was a tabletop, strategic role-playing game, it was pretty blasé looking. It showed these guys and basically it looked like, giant sleeping bag suits. And they had slits on their helmets and they hold these funny little guns, these skinny little guns. That was the packaging on the game. Never read the books. I believe they even tried to make it into anime at some point. Yes, they tried. Just like with Lensman, they tried to turn it into an anime. Yes, yeah. And then later the movie came out and it was nothing like what was said or depicted in the books. Right? That's what and it was done as a satire too. I can't even remember who the director was. He was a pretty weird director, but it was done as satire. And the director's name I can't recollect right now, but I think it was Paul Verhoeven, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Paul Verhoeven. He was the same guy that did Total Recall. He directed that movie. And then they came out with a CGI version of Starship Troopers. And even then it wasn't quite accurate to what was depicted in the books, right? About the humans having this armor, these powered armors that they tried to wear. And then in the anime, they were more like mechs, right? So if I was a fan of Starship Troopers, and I may have read the books and everything, well, pick your poison. Which one do you think you like? If you're not satisfied with any of them, then, well, God damn it, go back to reading the books then, and just be satisfied with that. But if somebody's going to get a hold of something that's an IP, and just to qualify IP here, intellectual property, you got to take what you can get. That's what it comes down to. You take what you can get. Don't complain about it if you're not, if it's not to your satisfaction of what you envisioned it in your head to be. Because if you're dissatisfied with it, go be a director. Go be a angel investor or somebody that's influential that's going to be able to direct that IP to the outcome you want. And the reason I bring that up was I was talking to someone the other day about the Blade Runner movie, the original Blade Runner movie. I think after they came out with all these box sets, and after it was at the advent that they were going to come out with Blade Runner 2049, I don't know how many versions of Blade Runner there are. And everybody likes the one with the narration all the way to the director's cut, all the way to the print copy, and all these myriad versions of Blade Runner. But the big picture that people need to realize, the vision was, didn't matter which one you liked. Everybody that watched those movies loves Blade Runner. And you just pick your flavor. But they all love Blade Runner, and that's who they were targeting mass market to, was fans of Blade Runner or new fans of Blade Runner, or people that influence people that watch Blade Runner. And that whole cyberpunk movement and everything else. That was one of the definitive movies that defined that genre. And you could have your quibbling and your debates about which one was the best one, but the picture that you need to see, the big picture that you shouldn't miss, is they're all fans of Blade Runner, and they still debate to this day which one is the best version, and that keeps it relevant. Because the fact that people are arguing over this and debating it means they still care about it. And when did that movie come out? That was a long time ago. It was like the 80s, I believe. I think it was early 80s that Blade Runner came out. Yeah. And it's still relevant. Yeah. Still relevant to people. And they have spin-offs of all kinds of genres of entertainment that came from that movie. The first one I think of and come to mind is that video game franchise Deus Ex and all its spin-offs. Right, and then you can talk of William Gibson and his cyberpunk movement, and there was the different things that spawned and spun off from that. What is it, Johnny Mnemonic? There was a game, I can't even remember now.
Cyberpunk has its own game. Yeah.
Well, no, there was a game that was spun off from that too. Shadowrun.
Shadowrun, yes.
A tabletop game, role-playing game that became a video game in myriad forms. And it spawned a genre of entertainment, whether it was through books and fiction or in movies or TV shows or video games, right? So if you look at going back to anime, do some of these intellectual properties, these IPs, do they spawn a genre that's still relevant? Like, when I think of Dirty Pair, I mean, it's kind of funny because I think of it's like watching Three's Company, but the male characters are all the different guys that come into their space, or the villains or whatever. So John Ritter usually is depicted in Dirty Pair as all these other men, but was it the original characters in Three's Company? It was Chrissy and I can't even remember the other woman's name because she was so forgettable. Everybody looked at Suzanne Summers, but it's yeah, I can't remember the name of her character, but I just look at that. Well, that's sort of like what Dirty Pair is, but Dirty Pair has all this violence, right? And the men are always considered to be the buffoons, right? That enter into the story, right? So basically, it was anime and it was Three's Company, right? If you want to look at it that way, from formula standpoint. But that's the thing, is if you go back to why the things are stagnant, maybe there isn't any interesting genres anymore that they can come up with or invent. Maybe they've run their course, and that's why even Hollywood sees a resurgence of the same old intellectual properties of recent, like Snow White. Like, who cares?
Okay, I hope you found that really interesting. Again, I do plan to do more different episodes with Richard because he has a lot to to comment on. And again, if you have any sorts of topics you want to suggest, or you want more elaboration on something, maybe to actually spend an episode talking about a particular concept, by all means, leave a message below, and then I'll make sure the next time I touch base with them, we'll get more on that. All right. So until next time, I will see you again.